episode of Grammar Time with Miss Hofstad. Okay, so we've talked about adjectives, we've talked about adjectives used to compare, we've talked about irregular verbs when you use them in different tenses, we've talked about adverbs. This week we're going to talk about adverbs that compare. So let's just do a little bit of a refresher. What is an adverb? Remember, an adverb tells where, when, or how something happens. They're used to describe verbs. So like if the verb was ran, the adverb is he ran quickly. That says how he ran. They can also be used to compare actions. So like for example, remember when we had adjectives and we said, if you compare two dogs, which dog is louder? If you compare more than two dogs, this dog is the loudest. So we're going to do that today with adverbs. So we're going to compare the actions, compare verbs, and talk about how you can use adverbs to compare verbs between two people or two things or multiple things. Let's look at adverbs that compare two actions. When you have one syllable adverbs like fast, quick, loud, you just add ER to the end of that if you're comparing two things. He ran faster than me. He yelled louder than me. The cheetah is quicker than the tiger. When you have adverbs that end in ly, like quickly, carefully, easily, you add more before that. Miss Seawitch did the math problems more easily than me. The cheetah ran more quickly than the tiger. He walked the tightrope more quickly than I did. So that's, again, when you compare two actions. Let's look at some examples. Sean got to school earlier than Amy. There you have, the adverb was early, and we added that ER to it. In this case, it early ends in a Y. If an adverb ends in a Y, you change the Y to an I before you add the ER to it. And that's a little bit more advanced than what we're getting to today, but I just thought I'd point that out since I used that in an example. So Sean and Amy were comparing two people, so just two things, and we're talking about he got, that's the action, he got to school earlier than Amy. The tortoise moved more slowly than the hare. So again, we have the tortoise and the hare. We're comparing two things, and we're comparing the verb moved, how they moved. And since slowly ends in ly, that's our adverb, we just add more to the beginning. The tortoise moved more slowly than the hare. Now let's look at adverbs that compare more than two actions. We add EST to the end of one syllable adverbs. So again, let's think about those examples from the first slide. Quick, fast, loud. Ms. Hofstad talks the loudest out of all the teachers at North Metro Flex. The cheetah runs the quickest out of all the animals in the forest. George reads the fastest out of all of the kids in his class. So again, there's those actions, reads, runs, talks, loudest, quickest, fastest. We're explaining those actions, but we're comparing them to more than two people, more than two things. Again, there's those adverbs that end in ly, slowly, quickly, carefully. When we're comparing more than two things, instead of putting more before it, we'll put most before it. So let's think of those. We'll use the cheetah again. The cheetah runs most quickly out of all the animals in the jungle. Olivia walks the tightrope most carefully out of all the kids in her class. George solves the math problem most easily out of all of the kids. Let's look at some examples. Out of all of his friends, Sean got to school the earliest. So again, we're looking at all of his friends, so that's more than two. And we're looking at the action of they got to school, and Sean got there the earliest. And again, there's that word early. We take the Y and we turn it into an I before we add the ending to it. The tortoise moved most slowly than all of the animals. So again, we're looking at all of the animals and how they move. So that's more than 2 actions. Most slowly. So here's a little cheat sheet just to kind of look at some more adverbs and give us our brains a little more information. If you're looking at the adverb slowly and you're comparing 2 actions, so let's say the tortoise and the hare, the tortoise moves more slowly. If you're looking at more than 2 actions, so let's say how the tortoise moves compared to all of the animals, he moves most slowly. Let's look at that adverb late. If you're looking at what time people got there, so the action of getting somewhere, one person might get there later than another person. If you're looking at multiple people and how they're getting somewhere, one person is going to be the latest. Here's that early one, just like the last example, Sean getting to school. Again, the action of getting somewhere, or you could use the action waking up. Sean wakes up earlier than Susan, but if you're looking at Sean compared to his whole family, that's more than 1 action. It's everyone waking up. So Sean wakes up the earliest in his family. One more, closely. Maybe we're talking about somebody looking at something closely. So Olivia looks more closely at the leaf. Maybe they're looking for a caterpillar. At the leaf than Eli. Now let's say who's going to look at that leaf most closely? Maybe Olivia looks at the leaf most closely out of all of the people in her class. So again, that's more than 2. This is 2, that's more than 2. Okay, so let's do some practice and then we'll be all done and you guys will be able to do it on your own in your reader's notebook. So she sings the loud in her choir. So we're talking about the action sing and we're talking about everyone in the choir. So that's more than 2. So again, we take loud, which is a 1-syllable adjective, and we add est to the end since it's more than 2. If it was just 2, we would just add the er to the end. Jerry arrived late than Ben did. So we're looking at that action of arrived and we're looking at 2 people, so it's 2 actions. And since late is just that 1-syllable adverb, we'll just add er to the end. Oh, here's another little trick, kind of like that Y trick. So later. Notice how I added er to the end, but I got rid of this E before I added er to the end. Otherwise, it would have looked like this. Later. So that's another one of those tricks. If it ends in an E, you drop the E before you add the er. So then it's just later. He drove, there's our action, carefully than the first driver. So we're just looking at he and the first driver, so 2 people driving. So since it ends in the ly and it's just 2, we'll say more carefully. He ran, there's our action, quickly out of all the kids in his class. So that's a lot of people running, that's more than 2 actions. So most quickly. Okay, you guys, that's all I have for you. This was kind of a quick lesson, but it was very similar to a previous lesson that we've had, so I think you guys will be able to do it. If you need help, again, you can always call me, email me, message me, and go ahead and do pages 90, 91, and 97 in your Reader's Notebook Volume 2. Have a good weekend. Miss you. He is louder. He yelled louder than me. Miss Hofstett is having tongue twisters right now. Woo! Let's start over. Oh, no. Whew. I'm turning my brain on 3rd grade. Beep, beep, beep. Okay. Now let's look at adjectives. Adverbs. Wow, I need to know what we're talking about if I'm going to do the lesson, don't I? Miss Hofstad talks the loudest out of all the teachers at